Ladies and gentlemen, please switch off your mobile phones and have a seat, please. The session starts right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's plenary, Innovation for Safe and Secure Transport. My name is Ali Aslan. I'm a Berlin-based TV presenter and journalist, and I have the great pleasure of steering you throughout the next 90 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. This plenary will examine the opportunities that innovation offers for enhancing the safety and security of transport systems. A lot of innovations have already been implemented, leading to more secure and safer transport. But of course, many more challenges remain, and that's what we're going to talk about in just a moment. You already see the chairs, the empty chairs that want to be filled and that will be filled in just a moment. But before I invite my distinguished panel for a discussion, it's a great pleasure and honor of having a brief discussion, of welcoming on stage a lady that I'm sure you are familiar with her work. She is an internationally acclaimed actress and also the Globe Road Safety Ambassador for the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Michelle Yeoh. Hello, Michelle. Please join me here. Lovely to have you here with us. And you are, as I said, an internationally acclaimed actress. Your face is known all around the world. We're all familiar with the great work that you do. I'm sure many people approach you to attach your name and fame to many causes, to many worthwhile causes. Now, you have decided to attach your name and fame to this particular cause, to become an ambassador, a Globe Road Safety Ambassador for the UN Decade of Action for Road Safety. Why? What was it about this particular initiative that drew you into it?
Thank you, Ali. And good afternoon, everyone. It's a real privilege and honor to be here, to be addressing all of you. Road safety was something I didn't really know about. And that the journey started about 10 years ago when Jean Todt, my better half, came home and said, would you please do some public announcements in Vietnam for the safety helmets. And I was advocating for a lot of, for AIDS, for cancer, for climate change, for animals. And that was the first time I heard about road safety, and I was not quite sure exactly what it entailed. And like all things that I do, I must make a very diligent investigation into what I would be advocating for. And I was shocked. I was so taken aback by the numbers that there were 1.3 million people dying, dead, fatalities every year. 15 million people were injured, which meant that there was 3,500 people dead on the roads, and 500 of them were children. With that kind of shocking news, and there I was advocating for AIDS and trying to find a cure. And this is something that is man-made. It's not a disease, and it had no reference of gender or age or whatever it is. It came, it took. And in a few seconds, lives were devastated. So I went to Vietnam, and Hanoi was the first place I visited. And thanks to the FIA Foundation, which was championing the cause there, we decided that we need to document this. We need to show people, have an understanding of what it was about. So it was a journey of discovery for me too. And when I went there and I met, when I first met the mother of a daughter who was on a motorcycle accident and she had passed, that sealed my fate. It's like she didn't want her child to have died in vain. She wanted the rest of the world to know that how important it was that she put a safety helmet on her little girl's head, and that would have prevented the tragedy. So that was 10 years ago. And I am still advocating because our numbers, even though it has declined, has not reached the target that what we are hoping for. Especially when 90% of the fatalities happen in the developing nations, and that's where the area that I come from. So I guess that is one of the reasons why I advocate so strongly for road safety, because we deserve it. We deserve to have, it's part of our human rights to have it.
And it's clear that just from this brief conversation, you're still emotionally attached to these stories, personal stories that you have encountered, and certainly your name and your reputation helps a great deal of highlighting this very important cause. Now, as somebody who travels a lot herself, of course, probably more in the air than on the ground, what concerns do you have personally? What concerns do you have in terms of travel safety?
When you're in the developed nations, you are blessed because the rules, the policies are much more in place. But of course, you still have the modern day things that still causes a lot of crashes, which is like distracted driving. But I think what hits most is when I'm traveling in the developing nations, where the policies are not in place, where you still see public transportation are not there. You know, the car in a lot of the Southeast Asian countries is a motorbike. And on the motorbike, sometimes you find a whole family, and they won't be wearing the safety helmets. I would also like to know, why is it manufacturers of motorcycles do not attach at least the safety helmets there? Because in those countries where they are so poor, for them to buy a safety helmet, it's almost like a prized possession, and they almost feel that they dare not wear it, you know? So there are so many issues that can be resolved, and I think it needs a lot of good neighbors, shared good practices to help, because in the developed nations, it's fantastic that you are seeing that they're aiming for 0 fatalities. But unfortunately, in the developing nations, we are in need of so much help that could come from you.
Still a lot of work to be done here.
So much work. If there was no work, I wouldn't be here. And I don't think all of you need to be here as well. But I'm grateful to see that you are now addressing the problem. It is top of your agenda. You are the movers and shakers in your own countries. And we need you to do that. Because as the people, as the society, we entrust our faith, our safety in your hands for you to make us better roads, safer roads, better infrastructure. But then I'm not saying that we do not take accountability, that we should also embrace all the things that you are doing for us and make the steps to put on the safety belts, put on the helmets. That's why with Jean, we have the 3,500 campaign, whereby we enlist celebrities, whether it's from the arts or from the sports world, to highlight these messages, to remind the people that this is also part of your commitment to road safety.
And indeed, the 3,500 Lives campaign, which you referred to, can be seen here. It's exhibited here at ITF, and as a matter of fact, displayed all throughout the city of Leipzig. I'm sure on your way here, you saw all the major celebrities, including Michelle Yeoh, that are fighting, or rather helping to raise awareness for these programs. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's become blatantly clear just from this very brief moment. Speaking of travel, I know you have to travel very soon, so I have a plane to catch in just a moment, but we are most grateful for your presence here today, but most importantly, for the important work that you're doing as Global Road Safety Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Yeoh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And safe travels indeed. I know it's quite a journey for you ahead on the way to Canada. Good luck with that. Michelle Yeoh, ladies and gentlemen. And now, of course, we have 6 chairs that want to be filled. And with that, I would kindly ask my panelist to join me here. She's the Minister of Transport and Communications of Finland. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anne Berner. I think your name should be there, and very pleased to welcome here on stage the Deputy Minister of Transport of the Russian Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikolai Asaul is here. Welcome. And with us is the Minister of Transport of the Republic of South Africa, Minister Bonginkosi Emmanuel Zimande. Ladies and gentlemen, is here. Welcome, Minister. Good to have you. And I'm pleased for them to join is the Executive Vice President of the Vehicle Inspection Service Division within DECRA, Nicolas Bouvier. Two more seats that need to be filled. Extremely pleased to welcome all the way from Singapore, the Head and Vice President of NEC Asia Pacific, Merve Chia. And to round up this distinguished panel, last but certainly not least, she is the CEO of Siemens Mobility, of the Siemens Mobility Division. Sabrina Susan is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Please have a seat. And of course, the topic, of course, that we're discussing here today is innovation for safe and secure transport, Minister Berner. Now, Finland, of course, a country that is being perceived as innovative, as being a trendsetter as far as innovation is concerned. Now, as far as this particular sphere and realm is concerned, namely safety, safe and secure transport, give us an insight on what projects your country has been highlighting and pushing.
Well, Finland is traditionally known for its good competence and knowledge both on mobile technology and competence, but also on mobility. Transport has been quite a conservative sector and in many ways not so much driving change. But we are seeing a lot of change right now. We have basically digitalization that can use data, which creates transport into a more service-oriented sector. And by using data, we can create a lot of new shared possibilities and also ways where vehicles are used in a different way. Technology enables us right now to see more autonomous and also technologies that aid drivers in many ways. And at the same time, also our structure, the way we live, the way we work is changing. So many of these factors. But in order to create a more safe and secure environment, we need systemic changes. And in Finland, we have been working on a few different elements. First of all, we have to make sure that our legislation and the whole regulative environment is one that isn't regulating technology, that we are keeping the doors open for innovation, and that our legal framework is more exactly that, a framework which gives room. We have to give more access to market, more space for companies to provide services and to create transport from an authority-driven into a user-oriented environment. So that we can do as legislators. The other thing that we can do as legislators is to enforce open data. And in Finland, we have created a law that makes sure that all service providers have to open up their data, so that we can make sure that there are new mobility services and also more service providers that are attractive enough to make sure that we have less cars in the transport system. Thirdly, we think that government can help in creating efficient and innovative procurement systems. We need, as large procurers, to give space and references to new companies and startups, even if they wouldn't in otherwise sort of qualify. And last but not least, an important issue is also how we create an environment for test beds, for innovation to come together, and how we make sure that we have enough space for experiments, even if the legal framework would not yet support that. So in Finland, for example, we have now a very large test bed for autonomous shipping, where anyone can participate with their autonomous tests and do that in a real-time environment in our seas. So there are things that we can do to drive innovation in Finland.
Things that you can do, and clearly things that you are already doing. The role of the government here clearly is key and essential. Thank you for the preliminary remarks to Minister Berner. Let's move it to the Deputy Minister Nikolai Assal, Russia. Big country, obviously, many people, particularly when we look at mega cities like Moscow. What innovations is your government, is your country driving when it comes to providing and ensuring safe and secure transport?
Вы абсолютно правы.
You are absolutely right. Our country is very big, and of course, it's relatively difficult to make progress for all freight operators. Freight operators have to fight for their customers. There is stiff competition in that business. And the problem is that they have to lower costs to the detriment of safety and security. And that's what we think about. How can we make sure that they can invest? What are the incentives we need to offer? Because here we try to have a monitoring system. There are 3 categories, red, yellow and green, 3 categories for freight operators, so that in case of accidents we can check which category they belong to. Are they in the red category, where we say here we have to improve safety by a lot, or do they belong to a different category? We have looked towards Europe and want to learn from European experiences. There are also international agreements for road safety, and we have tried to implement those agreements in Russia as well. And this is an ongoing process. We also want to see what the working conditions are for lorry and truck drivers, what the driving times are, what resting times are. A lot is already being implemented technically online. And as I said, this is about driving times and resting times, and we have monitoring systems for that. But we also want to make sure that drivers stick to the traffic code, and we want to see where there are deviations and where drivers infringe on the traffic code. We have created the technical systems in order to be able to trace truck drivers, in order to monitor what is going on, and also want to make sure that the drivers remain healthy, and that drivers are healthy enough in the first place to drive a lorry. Every driver has to pass a medical check. We also want to have good databases, so that we have data for every driver, and that is to be an incentive for drivers to invest in safety. This would make monitoring easier, because it is, of course, difficult to check up on every truck and lorry. We use a GPS system to ultimately save lives. We have more than 1 million vehicles which were fitted last year with a GPS system, and there were 4,000 accidents last year. However, with the GPS systems and other technical devices, we have been able to save a lot of lives. So with the GPS system, we try to localize the place of accident very fast. This is very important. We can also make good use of different apps, and the data are then sent directly to insurance companies. Our main task is to create a global IT platform for all modes of transport, so that we can better trace the paths of lorries, of trucks, of cargo and people, in order to see which safety zones need to be created, which changes need to be rung in for different modes of transport.
your country and government is doing as far as providing innovation for safer and secure transportation. We'll come back to you, of course, during the second round, but I want to turn to your colleague from South Africa now, Minister Zimande. Africa has been mentioned numerous times here throughout this conference, and I would very much like to hear from you. As far as your initiatives, your proposals on making transportation in your country more safer and secure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ali, for the invitation to participate in this panel. I would like to start just by saying that we have got pockets of what one would refer to as very innovative solutions and excellence in trying to use technology to improve our transport system. But there are also, which is a challenge, I suppose, for many developing countries, certain investments that we've got to make prior to making use of some of these technologies. For instance, government at the moment, we are putting in a lot of effort to increase broadband to begin with. Although we do have broadband, but it's still largely in your metros, urban areas, we would like to expand that. Such that, for instance, while we have, say, GPS in South Africa, but in some other places, you don't find it easily. The second thing is that, so the point I want to make is that usually the challenge that face developing nations is a choice, and it's a very difficult choice, between investing in innovation and building very basic infrastructure that is needed. In South Africa, there are areas where we've done well. Our highways are amongst the best in the world, for instance. And we innovatively also introduced, in South Africa, in the African context, e-tolls. We have not had a very good experience about that, I must say. There's been lots of resistance from the community, but our major highways in one province around Johannesburg have got e-tolls. I think we're also, as a country, we've done well, and we are proud of that, is that, which many people do not know, is that our air traffic and navigation system is amongst the best. In fact, 70% of the African continent is using our technology. In the African space, and that constitutes 10% of the world's global airspace for aircraft, civilian aircraft, that we actually are having. In fact, we can take you to Johannesburg, which is south of the continent, and you can see flights landing. To our observation center, you could see flights landing in Cairo, in Egypt, for instance. So, well, aviation, I would say we are amongst the leaders. We are proud of that and using modern technology. Now, nevertheless, as I've said, the big challenge is still on infrastructure, and it's usually a not very nice trade-off, you know. So we are not where we could be. As a result, in my vote, the budget vote this year as minister, one thing I've committed to do is actually to raise money for a research and innovation fund for transport, specifically. Both with a contribution from both government, but also from the private sector, and of course, if there are international institutions that are willing to assist, because the kinds of problems that we have, and the message that has been coming across from this forum since I attended from yesterday, is the absolute centrality of technology in providing safe and secure and affordable public transport.
Thank you so much, Minister, highlighting the trade-off, if you will, between infrastructure and innovation. Very intriguing and interesting one, which perhaps we'll dive a bit more into detail in just a moment. But let me turn to Nicolas Bouvier now. He's the Executive Vice President of the Vehicle Inspection Service Division within DECRA. And do you have a microphone? Is that what you're looking for? I think should be right there.
It helps.
Yeah, no, we are perfectly insured here when it it comes to
Excellent.
microphones, so don't worry about that. Nicolas Bouvier, tell us, obviously we've heard from 3 governments now, government representatives. You're coming from a different angle, but a very important one as far as providing for safe and secure transport. Give us your sense, give us a status quo on where things stand.
Well, precisely, we are a testing, inspection, and certification company. And our perspective is that we have first invested very heavily in homologation facilities, and we are still investing very heavily in facilities in order to be able to test all the ADAS and connectivity functionalities of the new cars and the cars of the future. So we believe in these technologies, and the investments we have made are very significant in Spain and in Germany. What we see is that for us to continue to play our role fully as a testing company, we need to extend the role of the testing companies to the homologation stage, because it is very important that we accompany these evolutions from the very moment that the cars are homologated. Why? Because if we don't have proper testing protocols that are defined when the cars are homologated, then we will not be able to test properly these cars. If we are not able to test these cars, then we are in a situation where we cannot play fully our role of independent third party, which is absolutely critical. When you think that we now are moving to highly automated systems in the cars, and that the vehicle inspection cannot test the electronic systems today, which are already in these cars, this calls for a big change. And I would here be absolutely in the same vein of what has been said before by Mrs. Minister. We need to make changes in the regulations so that the vehicle inspections can have access to the car data, so that we can really be able to make sure that these electronic systems are safe. Why? Because not only the mechanical parts deteriorates, after 10 years, the electronic systems also deteriorates. They are like other materials. So it means that we need to make sure that these systems still function. And the more these electronic systems are present, the more there is a need for this third-party eye on what's going on in the car. Mm-hmm. Another example is that we also need to check the ID numbers of the softwares which are implemented, which can be implemented and will be more and more overnight in your car. I mean, you probably want to know that the new software version that has been implemented in your car is certified and is the intended one. So this means that testing companies need to have access to this data. Mm-hmm. It is also a matter of fair competition and freedom of choice for the consumer.
Thank you for now. We'll get back to you. But many of the things you said, at least Minister Berner agreed with. I saw a lot of nodding here, so maybe we'll see where there's some room for cooperation. But let me turn towards Asia now, and to Singapore in particular. We have with us Mervyn Chea. He's the head and vice president of NEC Asia Pacific. Obviously, you're representing your company here today, but your country as well. Singapore being associated with many innovations. Tell us about what your country is doing, but perhaps more specifically also for those who are not familiar with the work of your company. What is it that your company is doing? How is your company providing and contributing to a safer and more secure transportation environment?
Wow, that's 2 questions. So let me start by talking about Singapore, and then I'll talk about my company, NEC, and what we're going to do in transport. I think in Singapore, we are a very small island, 5.5 million people. And this very small island is kind of fairly populated. And me, as a user of roads, transport, trains, and everything, I can say that Singapore is very concerned on accidents, congestion, as well as reducing the queues. There are queues, especially at the airport, for example. So these are the three key concerns. I'm not sure whether there's any correlation, but if you were to actually look at congestion, the more congested the roads are, maybe you are less distracted in driving. The less congested the roads are, you may want to try to be a little bit more distracted by taking your mind off or looking at your handphone and stuff like that. So that's basically a concern in Singapore. Singapore cannot build many more roads as they need to because the island is that big, that's all, right? So they are looking into having more rails. So the idea is that by 2028 is to have every household in the entire island to be able to reach a train station within 8 minutes. That's the dream. And then from your house to the train station, you actually use your personal mobility device or you walk. So it's end-to-end. So hopefully that will reduce the congestion. The second part is that the shift from private to public transport. It's a very tough game. Those who drive find it very troublesome to take the public transport because you'll get too crowded on the trains. That's a key issue for Singapore. Congestion also in the trains. And you cannot find a way to board the train as it comes because it's crowded. And you got to wait for the next train and next train and next train. So that's something that Singapore has to worry on. And it's still a worry until more trains comes in, more lines and more cross lines and everything. Then actually you find that people will really move to the public transport mode. The third part is that of accidents. Strangely, Singapore operators, bus operators, actually hire many non-Singaporeans to be bus drivers. So we have Malaysians, we have Chinese, we have Indians, everybody else driving the bus. Somehow, one operator, I don't want to say the name of the operator, recorded about 50 bus accidents in a month. And when you have an accident on a bus, it is very painful to the bus operator because you have to send it for repair, and then you have to have it not in use, and therefore you have to reduce the number of buses on the roads. How then do you actually prevent the bus drivers from causing accidents? So that's the key problem in Singapore. So what is NEC doing? I'm answering your second question now.
Right.
So we have two key technologies. One is facial recognition. As of January this year, we still maintain as the #1 face recognition company in the world. So we have it installed at the airports. So our Changi Airport, for example, we will have fingerprint, face, and eyes, all from NEC. So the Singapore will be installing that at the Changi Airport. All right, so multimodal, because sometimes the fingerprint, you don't get it right because it's dry and everything. So you use the other portion of the model to reduce queues. So if you can have eyes and face and everything, you get through very fast. That's the whole idea. We have one more technology called predictive analytics. And it's quite a self-owned development by our labs. And we asked one operator, hey, you got so many accidents. What if I can tell you that I know which driver will cause an accident within the next 3 months? That means I predict ahead that this driver will be having an accident in the next 3 months. And before you have that, you get the results, you actually send the driver for training before he even caused an accident. They didn't believe it. This is innovation. So we showed the technology, and we showed them, don't give me the bus driver names, just give me serial numbers and everything. And then we actually churning out the results using the patterns, telematics and everything. And we actually showed to them the results without knowing the names. And they verified. They didn't do anything. They didn't send the bus driver for any training. But the results showed that we were very accurate in detecting the bus drivers who were actually causing an accident. So that's innovation. The idea is that bus drivers do not cause accidents, will not create problems on having public transport. So if more people believe that the bus drivers will not cause an accident, then they will want to take the bus and the trains. I hope that you will answer the question. So we do
Absolutely.
big data analytics and facial recognition.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very innovative stuff indeed. Facial recognition, of course, in Europe and with our privacy measures might be a different story, perhaps. We can talk about that in just a moment. But you talked, of course, about how your country is trying to place the emphasis more on railway, and which is, of course, a very nice segue to Sabrina Susan, who's the CEO of Siemens Mobility Division, and in that capacity, she is responsible for high-speed trains, commuter and regional trains, amongst others. So, Sabrina Susan, I think the emphasis on trains on the part of Singapore should make you happy. Siemens, of course, a very innovative, important company here in that ground. What are the latest projects that you're working on?
First of all, I like your dream. Having train stations not far than 8 minutes, and I'm very pleased to be here and to talk about security and safety in the transport sector, because I think it's a problem it's an issue for our society, not only for us or as a company or as a person, but for our society. At the time of transportation, which undergoes profound changes due to digitalization, we are working on it very actively, of course, as a company. And we support this change with many different technologies that I would like to share with you today. And it's not only improving safety and security, it's improving performance as well. If I start with performance, we improve drastically the capacity of the existing infrastructure. So that's good for our society, especially when more and more people want to use public transport. Then the second topic is we improve as well the availability of our trains. We provide trains and we provide infrastructure solutions, and the availability will be enhanced due to the digitalization technologies. And last but not least, we improve the passenger experience as well in the quality of travel. Because the passenger, they want to be able to work on the trains, to have access to Wi-Fi, to be able to have access to entertainment, to be able to have access to applications with intermodality. That's what we do as well, to travel from A to B, not only with a train, but to see, okay, I have to take a train, then I have to take a car, then I have to take a bicycle, and here we offer this with our applications. So what I would like to focus today is 3 topics. The first is what kind of technologies are we are developing to support the human, and I don't say to replace, I say to support humans in order to make the transport safer and more secure. Because we know that most of the accidents are due to human failures. So how can we support the human? And again, I don't say replace. Second topic, which are the new risks that we are facing because of digitalization? One that everyone has in mind is cybersecurity. So what do we do? Because we have more and more digital technologies, what do we do to make sure that cybersecurity is an important topic and is managed as a risk? And last but not least, we talked quite a lot about road, but I personally believe, especially because my heart is on the railway side, that railway can bring a lot on the table because we are using already technologies. If you think automated driving, then we are doing this for a very long time, very successfully. If I start with the technology part, I don't know if everybody knows, but you have 127 times less likely to be injured on a train than on a car. 127 times. So this is a figure which is extremely high. And why? Because we have extremely high level of standards in our industry. standards of homologations for the trains, of course, but as well for the infrastructure. The infrastructure is certified, and it should not be higher than 1 failure per billion operating hours. That's our world. And that's why it is so safe. Yeah. Of course, for this, we have a lot of innovation, like certified software, certified component. We do predictive analytics as well in order to recognize when a train will have an issue before the issue occurs. Same for infrastructure, and it's very important for the future because you're able to detect before something happens. So that's great. And of course, we have as well CCTV system, a little bit like you mentioned, but we have CCTV systems in our train or in the railway stations. And this will enable to recognize when there is an aggression, for example, and to automatically generate an alarm. So this is safety as well, safety for our passengers. Last but not least, automated driving. Automated driving, we are running it in the railway for a very long time, especially in metro system. We have done it in, you asked me for projects in Paris, where we have an old line where we retrofitted it to automated driving. We are running since years without any one injury, so very safe. Yeah. So that's one example of the projects that we make. My second topic was cybersecurity. Here, I guess we will come on this topic later, but this is not only an issue of one company, this is an issue of all of us, and that's why we decided to go for charter of trust with other companies in order to develop the right technologies and the right global standards to make sure that we are safe, and that our passengers are safe. And here we need to leverage the rail experience for automated driving. Yeah. And important in the difference with the road is that we have a network. We have a network where the trains and the infrastructure are linked. And when a train is not where it is supposed to be, then it will be stopped automatically. And that's what we have to think of when we think of road and automated vehicles. How can we build this network and not only have one vehicle alone on its own, but to have a network to bring it into an operational center and to be able to see what will happen and to be safe. Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for now. We'll come back to you in just a moment, but I think you've given us a great overview of what the priorities of Siemens are as far as innovation is concerned. I think one sentence stands out here, namely Siemens, you want to support humans, not replace them. I think as far as driving is concerned, I think that's an important takeaway here. Now, we have a great deal of expertise here on the panel. That much has been established, a lot of food for thought that our 6 speakers has given us, but we also have a lot of expertise here in the audience, which I would like to make use of. So if anything that has been said so far has either struck a chord or raised a question mark, now would be your time to speak up. Now would be a good opportunity to address this panel. I believe we have microphones in the room, so if you have a question, if you have a remark, a comment, or something that you would like to contest that you have heard, this is your opportunity. I'm looking into the audience. This is still a very timid, shy audience, it seems. Maybe they've agreed with everything you've said up until now, which is not a bad thing. But I'll give you, since there doesn't seem to be any interventions, any questions from the audience at this particular point, perhaps, Minister Bennett, we can pick up from where we left off. What have you heard from your 5 colleagues here, 5 speakers on the panel, that has struck a chord that resonates with what you are trying to do in Finland?
Well, I would thank all my colleagues for very good interventions and very good points. When I listen to this, I absolutely am more and more convinced that data and technology are very key in how we are improving safety and security on every travel mode. I also agree with the fact that a lot of accidents that we have and fatalities that we have in the traffic system are based on human error. And the more that we can eliminate that and support the human in those areas, the better we can increase safety and security on issues. And there I think that we still have to do a better work in looking at the traffic system as something which has to be holistic. We are still too much looking at different transport modes separately. And I think a holistic transport system needs also a traffic management which is holistic in many ways and also feeds into the system so that the travel chain is seamlessly, that we go door-to-door services, but also that we can actually support the different transport modes with each other. One more thing that also, which I understand very much from my South African colleague, is the importance of infrastructure. And I think one of the key issues in the future is how can all of this data, how can we, with all the technology developments, create also new models, how we can invest and integrate into the infrastructure? How can we become there much better? I think all societies are deteriorating in infrastructure in one way, whereas at the same time, all transport mode vehicles are improving in technology, and the intelligence is going into the transport modes and away from infrastructure. And this is something I think that we have to, as societies, tackle and learn how to do better. One more thing is that you mentioned very shortly also the challenges that we have, for instance, in Europe with privacy issues. Everything is becoming data related, and the more we use data, the more we can probably also support safety and security. But at the same time, we have to deal with privacy issues and also find a way to balance the two. And there I think we need also more and more look into ethical and moral questions on a society level. And there we have to work together with industry, with governments, institutions, but also with academia. And we need more academia into this discussion than what we have here maybe today. And from that perspective, I would like to also say welcome to Finland in 2020. We will have the TRA conference there, which is about research and development in transport. Mm-hmm. And there we actually find academia, business, and society, government structures working more together.
So in 2 years' time then.
In 2 years' time.
So mark your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. It's never too early to mark your calendars. We're looking forward to that event. Deputy Minister Assal, what have you heard from your peers here on stage that has resonated with you?
I have to agree. We need to improve safety and security. We have to reduce stress for drivers. We need to create fast connections. And we should do it as Finland does it. Finland, where, for instance, customs formalities are sorted out very fast at the borders compared to Russia. And also, speaking of fast roads, we should make sure that we reduce stress for drivers. We have developed a program to create some kind of viaduct where we can improve safety and security. Of course, this is about motorway bridges, but railway companies don't want to invest in such motorway bridges. With public-private partnerships, we want to achieve a lot in this respect. Also, tolling systems for long-distance roads and motorways. Also, a tolling system for lorries heavier than 12 tons. That has been introduced. And you may remember other developments in Russia as well, where we could implement things with the help of investors. We have also tried to install as many video cameras as possible along the roads, where we can pick up on excess speed or other infringements of the traffic code, or when cars are parked on pavements. This is an automated camera system. It used to be a private initiative. And of course, it needs to be profitable. But the great advantage is that with that, we could reduce the number of accidents, because it disciplines drivers when they know there are cameras fitted along the roads. Also, we have tried autonomous driving, driverless cars. This is also an important step, as we know that drivers need resting times and people don't always comply with that. For us, it's important that drivers remain hale and hearty and are in good health. Of course, we can check on that using technology in order to check whether a driver has become drowsy or is in danger of nodding off. Another big problem, our passengers very often don't belt up, and we have tried to inform the public a lot about issues like that. And indeed, the situation has improved. Now cars stop at zebra crossings. People use the seat belt in cars. So I think we have solved that problem. Of course, we have to work on improving our infrastructure. So we have to look where are the highest number of accidents. We have tried to map that and find clusters on a map. And now we also create median strips on highways so that the oncoming traffic is not involved in accidents on the other lane. If we succeed in doing all that, I think in the future we will be able to reduce the number of road fatalities. And this is about all modes of transport. Modes of transport don't really compete with each other. Quite on the contrary. When we established fast trains, bullet trains between Moscow and St. Petersburg, a lot of people were afraid that there would be no flights anymore between Moscow and St. Petersburg. But quite the opposite is the case. There is now more demand for flights because we offered better mobility. Now there are more bullet trains and more flights between Moscow and St. Petersburg. This is a good example that ultimately we have been able to improve safety and quality by offering different modes of transport. Thank you very much.
Seems to be a good example of that public awareness campaigns still work. They still have an impact. They still seem to have an impact, educational effect on people, and show positive results. So that's encouraging to hear. Minister Zimande, you heard from your fellow 5 speakers. I saw you taking diligent notes. Perhaps you want to share some of those with us.
Yes, no, thank you. I think that there are a couple of messages that are coming out. The first one is serious concern about road crashes and road fatalities. I mean, it's actually coming out. I must say that I'm a bit astounded. I wouldn't have thought that in Europe this would be such a big issue. because we tend to think maybe if you take the African continent, for instance, we have 2% of the world's vehicles, but we have 20% of road fatalities globally as a continent. I would have thought that maybe it's something that is big to us. I think maybe the challenge, also what we are not saying, which my colleagues know, it's my own both excitement and discomfort about what we refer to as the fourth industrial revolution. It's same also when I'm thinking about driverless cars. Will the fourth industrial revolution really benefit the whole of humanity, or it could deepen uneven development? Because that's an issue also that we're talking about here. I mean, if you compare Finland to South Africa, for instance, despite the fact that South Africa is arguably the most advanced country on the African continent in terms of the many things that we have, then this poses the question. Well, one of the things, let me say this, that I came to this is the first time I'm coming to ITF, because it's just about the only international forum that talks about all modes of transport. Now, maybe the challenge to the world today, how do we better interact between developed countries and developing countries in the area of transport? Because also it's going to be difficult to have excellence, say, in Europe, or a better situation, and have horror in other parts of the world, particularly when it comes to aviation, just as an obvious example. How do we better cooperate? How do we also better deal with issues, for instance, relating to road safety? I'm not being pessimistic. I can't imagine driverless cars in South Africa for a number of reasons that I can say. Also, I think maybe coming back to the matter that I raised, infrastructure and technology is not just that they're like dichotomies. You can't use certain technology unless you have particular type of infrastructure. For instance, if you are to, like investing in broadband, you know, that's part of infrastructure. At the same time, it's part of technology. Now, the other matter, just very briefly, which perhaps I did not emphasize there, is that the issue of innovation, investment in research and innovation in South Africa is not just in transport, it's a general challenge. We have about 0.79% of our GDP that goes into research and innovation. We have to uplift that for the country as a whole. We can't just be doing, well, transport can make its own contribution, but we have to look at the country as a whole, because some of the innovation may not be coming from transport-related research, but it may be coming from our higher education system in general, but things that could be of help and useful in transport as well as on other matters. Just lastly, the one thing I forgot to say, which is something we're proud of, is that we've developed now a database nationally for driver offenses. You can go to the laptop. For us, it's something important, and check your offenses and be able to pay online. It's something for the first time that we are having that enables us. Before I could commit an offense in one part of the country, I go to another part of the country, they wouldn't pick me up that I've committed another offense somewhere else. Now we are able, and it's part also of wanting to implement maybe what parts of Europe already do, a demerit system, so that we are able to tighten punishment for habitual, violators of traffic rules. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Minister Zimande. And of course, striking numbers that you have provided about the proportionality as far as how many, the traffic that Africa makes up and the casualties that arise from it. Certainly a huge discrepancy in a negative terms, much to be done here. Nicolas Bouvier, also want to give you the opportunity and chance to respond to what you've heard here so far.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I've heard that, and I totally agree that innovation is linked to access to data, and that we also have to look after data security. And I would like to take just a very basic example. If I drive on the motorway and my car breaks down, then my car will communicate to the car manufacturer, and I will have the information whether I should be able to continue to drive 100 kilometers or if I should wait for the towaway service. It is important that as a consumer, as a driver, I have the freedom of choice. If I want also my automobile club to have this information, or my car rental company, or whichever supplier. And this is absolutely critical in order to be able to continue to deliver innovation in service for the consumers, for the drivers. So access to the data is critical. And this is why we need the governments to intervene in the WP29 at the UN level to make sure that we enforce the proper regulations for this to happen, so that we make sure that the general public interest is preserved. In terms of data security, many times we hear car manufacturers saying that, you know, if we access the car data, then everything is unsafe because data is safe only with the car manufacturers. And I'm glad to hear that in the train industry already, other options have been found to have trustworthy solutions. And I think that of course, there are other opportunities to make sure that data is safe. If we look at the TRL study that was ordered by the European Commission, many options exist. So it shouldn't be discarded as a pre-concept of data security that only one actor has access to the data, because this results in a monopoly. So if we want to preserve innovation, if we want to foster innovation and therefore safety and freedom of choice for the consumer, we need this to happen. And we need to work on a safe system that will allow over-the-air access to the car data.
Thank you, Nicolas Bouvier. And privacy, of course, monopoly in that particular term, of course, an important issue, Mervyn Chair. Many of the speakers have responded to what you were saying also about face recognition and privacy. And I mean, these are things that are of particular concern here in Europe. You want to act globally, I understand. How do you reconcile the concerns on the part of, in this part of the world, with the innovation and technology that you're offering?
Well, let me first answer about the data protection and stuff like that. Well, in Singapore, once you have a signboard that says surveillance, you're on surveillance and everything, there is a PDPA that says that it allows you to have your face to be captured on surveillance. That's in Singapore. I also believe that in the United Kingdom, where NEC is playing a big part in providing facial recognition, there was a recent football finals in Wales. And they actually installed facial recognition to see whether they could actually match any suspicious behaviors or terrorism. So they actually have that installed in Wales, Cardiff Stadium, for example. So they have actually been doing that. So United Kingdom is also opening up to do all that data and stuff. I don't see a reason why Europe should not do it. Australia is also doing it as well. Most of the facial recognition systems in Sydney, and they're using facial recognition to actually enter into the airport. Sorry, into the city, and using facial recognition to get out as well. That has been also installed by the NEC systems. So that is being allowed. more and more so. So countries, for that, is better for security, better for fast queues, so you don't have to have the long lanes and everything. So it's convenience to the commuters, convenience to the users as well. I understand from the Minister of Finland that we should really have more data and have the data be open. We definitely support it. NEC definitely support it. NEC has been working with a French construction company called Colas SA, actually to look at the number of people in the car for congestion. All right? NEC is also working closely with a large system integrator in Russia, Moscow, where NEC has placed 28 LED displays in the roads, 9 meters square, to tell drivers where they should be going, the weather, and the jams, so that it gives them more convenience. Mm-hmm. So these are data that actually you need to give to the commuters as well, sharing the data, right? NEC definitely is working with Singapore and many other countries, including Latin America. What NEC is trying to do is actually to help cities also to reduce congestion. We kind of also try to recommend to cities to use more or to construct more BRTs. BRT actually started in Brazil. So definitely there's more BRT in Latin America. But today you see 203 cities using BRT now, covering more than 5,000 over kilometers. Mm. Indonesia, Jakarta, for example, started BRT only in 2004. And it was only started to actually with 13 kilometers, but now it has grown very, very long. And Indonesia is the next place. June will be the ASEAN Games. So NEC is playing a very big part in the ASEAN Games as well. So data is important, but at the same time, it is good that governments would be able to agree to kind of allow such technologies to be used so that it helps to improve the convenience of commuters.
So the benefits from your point of view clearly outweigh the concerns, I understand correctly. Now, before I ask you again in the audience, I'm not letting you off the hook that easily because I cannot imagine that there aren't any questions or responses and reactions from your end. So please, I'm going to come to you in just a moment, but want to give, of course, Sabrina, Susan, the opportunity to also react to some of the statements and remarks by her peers here.
I will be very short and we will have time for questions. First of all, I hear that there are some issues everywhere. And I think that as a society, we need to act and to do something. And we are the transportation is becoming more and more intermodal. And we need to use it and to learn from each other, to talk to each other and to learn from each other. If you remember the example that I gave on what we do on the railway for safety and security, we can use it for other means of transportation and probably the other way around. And here I think we could improve a lot communicating together and working together, not only across countries, but across means of transportation. And digitalization and automation, so to automate more and more in order to reduce the risk is one key for improving the situation where we are today. I'm convinced that it is one way. The other way for me is that we should not look at individual vehicles, and that's part of the success of the railway industry. We have the vehicles which are connected together to the infrastructure. And we have to make it work for all means of transportation. So this network and this working together and building a network, making sure that we are safe. And last but not least, I would say that this topic is a non-ending activity, and we will continue to work on it, and we will have always to improve, and it will have no end because we want to be more and more secure and safe.
Indeed, the innovation for safe and secure transport is an ongoing, never-ending progress. Of course, always new technologies, new ideas that come around the corner. Now, for the past 70 minutes, we've heard a lot of food for thought from our panelists. Now, I want to throw it back one more time to you in the audience and see if you have any remarks, questions that you would like to pose to our panelists about everything that's been said up until now. We have a question all the way in the back. Microphone is coming to you. Please introduce yourself quickly. Microphone is coming to you right. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Andy McLaughlin. I'm a road safety expert and I work in emerging economies around the world. We've already heard from the Honourable Minister of Transport from South Africa, who mentioned the fact that although technology is evolving in the developed countries, there is an issue with how that technology can be transferred to developing countries. Automated vehicles, for example, there's a real risk that as the developed world moves towards improving safety through the use of automated vehicles, that the developing countries could be left behind. We actually risk increasing the age of the vehicle fleet in the emerging economies, which in some cases is already 30 years. My question to the panel really is, does the panel agree with what I'm saying and what the Honourable Minister said? And if so, how do they foresee that this challenge can be addressed, bearing in mind that 90% of casualties on the roads occur in developing countries? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Minister Zimande, I think some of it was based, the questions based on what you've been saying. If anyone wants to chime in here, this was a question to the entire panel, as I understand. Do you want to take that one?
Well, I can't agree more, you know, with the sentiment that is being expressed, in the sense that that was the question also I was trying to pose earlier. How do we improve sharing of knowledge and expertise globally on transport matters? Someone, I think yesterday, was talking about, you know, involvement and collaboration globally, say on HIV and AIDS and so on. But we don't have a similar thing just on road safety. Maybe the United Nations is trying to do something, but as I say, on a multimodal system, we aren't really sharing perhaps enough at a global level, especially between developed and developing countries. I'm sure that there must be some cooperation, but we need to look into that. How do we deepen that? If you ask me in South Africa today, what's my single biggest challenge? It's to build a mass integrated public transport system that talks to each other. For instance, what we sometimes even call public transport in South Africa, strictly speaking, is not. Because 65% of commuters daily, 65% of commuters are carried by privately owned minibus taxis, which are not owned by the state, they are owned by individuals. Usually it's small taxi owners who own one or two and so on. That's 65%. Now, part then of building a mass transport system would be to say, for instance, government's commitment is to shift both freight and passengers from road to rail. But it's going to be a challenge. I know that Europe, for instance, has got a fairly good rail system, you know. It's going to be a challenge now because trucks in South Africa are just ravaging our roads, yet it's not going to be easy to move them out and take freight, for instance, into rail. Those are kinds of things that perhaps we need to improve and create better platforms. You know, ITF is one, an important one, but how do we, even to share research information, you know, and knowledge system. For instance, one of the things I want to do is to establish a few university chairs, professorships, on different disciplines of transport as one way of trying to drive this investment into research and innovation.
Thank you so much. Mr. Barrett, did you want to address the question as well?
Yes, why not? I think there are more possibilities than I think we sometimes believe. I think many of the European countries have some disadvantages on their own. We have basically strong institutional hierarchic systems, we have tough regulations, we have legal frameworks that are based in historic systems. Whereas a lot of emerging countries still already work very much mobile-based. And when you say that you are building up a mobility as a service business network, which is based on a lot of entrepreneurial thoughts of smaller vehicles used more on-demand based, that is actually something where we are trying to go in Europe. Whereas we have quite conservative public transport systems, which we are trying to become more flexible, more mass-oriented. So that's one thing. The other thing I think is also that when we look at automated vehicles, we certainly think that automated vehicles, especially in public transport, will be something that will support both congestion, emissions control, but also safety and security. Do we actually know for a fact that these are so dependent on intelligent infrastructure? They are dependent on digital infrastructure, but not necessarily on highly intelligent roads. More and more the intelligence is in the vehicles, more and more it's based on satellite navigation, on other competencies, which we share more and more. And where I couldn't agree more is that we need, as I also said before, more academia. And this is something which we are lacking completely in Finland also. We don't have professorships in our universities that are working with transport research or the safety issues of transport. And there I think we have to do absolutely more. And this is not only an African continent issue, this is also a European issue where we have to do much better. And I think we have to learn to share more and work more together, and I think this is what we're doing today.
Indeed.
Right here.
Right here, right now, perhaps a great opportunity and field for mutual cooperation here in the future. I'm looking at the audience. We have another question here from the gentleman who has his hand up. Microphone is coming to you. Please introduce yourself.
McIntosh from the Australasian College of Road Safety and also Chair of Global NCAP. I think this issue of skill in the people is something that we're missing altogether. That we talk about data and we talk about the data of the transport, of the number of vehicles, the amount of roads, the numbers of fatalities, the number of injuries, but we haven't got a clue about how many people are skilled enough to transfer the knowledge from one country to another, or even work within a country. How many people do we need? What is our talent base? How many people in aircraft safety can help the people in road safety? We don't know. We've never measured. I can't find anywhere where we are measuring the talent we need. And if we develop a database, we can then decide whether we need professors. We probably need more professors, but we also need better skilled engineers in manufacturing, better skilled engineers in road making. We need the people to do the work. Focusing on the autonomy is not the issue. That will happen. People who are smart will find that out. But we need people who know how to work across the borders, how to work across the different facilities, how to learn from the railway, how to learn from the aircraft to put into roads. We need the people database. That people database, the talent database, is something we urgently need.
Thank you so much. More comment than a question, but one that inferring from the many nodding heads here on the panel is very much appreciated and well received. Let's see, with the remainder of the time, time is running out fast. Do we have more questions and comments from the audience? 3, 2, 1, sold. No, we have one final bidder. Microphone is coming to you, or should be coming to you here, all the way down, second row. Please get this gentleman a microphone so we can include his question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm Michael Replogel, Deputy Commissioner from New York City Department of Transportation. The European Commission last week introduced a proposal for a number of mandatory safety initiatives in new motor vehicles, including intelligent speed assistance. I wonder if the panel could address the opportunities that this new technology offers to save lives and to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the traffic system in Europe and worldwide by helping drivers observe speed limits, reduce the penalties that they get from speeding tickets, and also reduce pollution and greenhouse emissions. I think it's a brilliant proposal, and I'd in fact like to take it back to America with me.
Thank you. Well, let's give the gentleman something to take with him to America. So, Nicolas Bouvier, you want to take that?
Yes. I think intelligent systems to inform the driver about his driving speed or any other information is always very interesting information to give, because as we all know, I mean, first speeding is still a big cause of accident, and also we know that behavior sometimes is not full of attention for the road because of all the disturbing factors that we can get from inside a car, outside a car, sending SMS, and all this behavioral attitude. So anything that can help. It's the same for pedestrians. You know, in Germany, they've been testing some new pedestrian lights so that people who walk with a handphone can actually see the light on the ground. So all these new techniques are add-ons. They are not. There is no unique solution, but all these techniques need to be tested, and they can be add-ons.
Minister Berner, the European Commission was mentioned. I give you the opportunity to have the final word, but I think your South African colleague wants to chime in here.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to? Yes. That's how I understood it. So please go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're up now.
No, you know what you are mentioning is my dream. I've got these minibus taxis. There are 120,000 of them in South Africa. One of the things I dream about is that they are very prone to accidents. They are one of the biggest causes of road fatalities. Is to know where each one of these 120,000 are. And are they observing the speed? Are passengers wearing seat belts? You know, that's the kind of innovation and technology I would like to see. Of course, you are right. There may be issues about privacy in some respects, but maybe not show faces. I don't know. NEC may not be happy about that. But it's something that I would agree strongly. That's all that I wanted to say, that it's something that we need to look at. You know, because for us in South Africa, I suppose maybe internationally, biggest human error or causes of road fatalities and crashes is speeding and drunken driving, which are the two things that are a problem. So if we could find a way of monitoring these vehicles, that would really be an excellent idea. Thank you.
Well, let's try to make your dream come true, Minister. This is, thank you for your input and sharing it. To bring it all home and wrap up this panel, Minister Berner, the question and appeal from the gentleman from New York. You want to take that?
Yes, I'm very happy that there's something that Europe can send with you to New York. I think from a regulator's point of view, I think we are in a time where we have several tools in our hands where we can support safety and security on all transport modes. What my colleague from South Africa mentioned, in Finland we are requiring open data by all service providers. And that means that anyone who is offering a service of transporting people will need to open up their APIs. And that means that we will know where they are located at all times. We know how much free capacity they have. We know how much the price will be, the routes, and where they'll be stopping. And it's not important that the government knows that, and they don't have to open it towards the government, but to each other. And that is, I think, the brilliance of it, because that makes mobility as a service possible. The other thing is, which we are just now having on consultation, is the positioning requirement of all heavy transport vehicles and all trains in real-time data. And I think, again, we can use technology to make sure that the transport system as a system is more safe and secure. At the same time, we are constantly facing new technology developments in the individual car and the individual vehicle. And the speed control is one example. But we also have sensors, radars, cameras, and other tools where we are supporting the driver to have more ability to control the car, to have a better view, and to have a better understanding of the things that are surrounding the cars, the movements around the car. What we have learned also, and the unfortunate thing is that we always learn through accidents. And people normally have to die in order to actually create new law. And the question is really, how can we go the other way so that we can promote new device, new technology, and do it in such a way that we don't have to put in our laws that now the device, in order to control speed in a car, has to be exactly like this, because that will then prevent the innovation from that specific service to be developed in the next dimension. So we have to learn how to deal with all these technology developments in a way where we constantly foster innovation, constantly foster new research, and constantly make sure that there are developments so that we don't have the time where we say, okay, now we have such and such a cars that are certified in this and this way, and right now you have to deal with what's on the market, but we have to make sure that there are open ends constantly for improvement. The Commission is doing a good work on this. Hopefully manufacturers are doing, and certifying companies as well. And it's, again, the cooperation between all of us that makes it great.
Ladies and gentlemen, innovation for safe and secure transport, that's what this panel and this plenary has been about. I think I speak for all in the audience when I say that this panel has given you a lot of food for thought, a lot of impetus to strive forward in providing for more innovations that will make us more safer and secure when it comes to the field of transportation. Now, of course, the ITF is convening every year in Leipzig, in the state of Sachsen and Saxony. So if all of you, if any of you would be interested in what the state of Saxony is doing, the Saxony's approach towards safe, autonomous, and connected driving, you have the opportunity now for a session sponsored and organized by the Free State of Saxony. Starts at 3:30. Many thanks also to Michelle Yeo, of course, for kicking off this session and her commitment as a global road safety ambassador for the UN Decade of Action. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been it for me. The plenary has been concluded, and let's give it up with a nice round of applause for this wonderful panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.